Well, at least half of our chicken flocks have now been culled. Farmers are trying to stop the avian flu virus from spreading, but it's a virus that in some cases literally spreads on the wind. It makes it almost impossible to stop from moving around. Professor Robert Bragg is at the Department of Microbiology and Biochemistry at the University of the Free State. Professor, good afternoon to you. I mean, this virus spreads so easily, it spreads so quickly. Is it really possible to stop chickens from getting it?
Well, look, this is, as you mentioned, it spreads on the wind. It is an airborne virus, and it does spread quite quickly. It is possible to stop the chickens from getting it if you're using good biosecurity measures. So what I mean by good biosecurity measures is making use of disinfectants to stop the virus from getting onto your farm. So things like proper use of foot baths, and then if you're using a good product and that's registered to use in this way, you can add it to the drinking water, and you can even spray the birds down with some of the products. Not all products can be used in this way. The product has to be specifically registered for that application, and then you can stop it from getting onto your farm. But vaccination is a last resort. In the past, we had an influenza outbreak, probably it was about 2 years ago, and the policy is stamping out. And around the world, in many parts of the world, the policy is stamping out. So if a flock becomes infected, the flock is then culled. And as we know, there's about 7.5 million birds have been culled so far, which is a substantial portion of the poultry flock. That was successful in the past, but this time now it appears that the disease has got out of hand.
Why are we following that policy of stamping out rather than vaccination?
The influenza virus, avian influenza virus, is a particularly dangerous virus, not only for the birds. It's a devastating disease in poultry flocks. It can wipe out a poultry house of 30,000, 40,000 birds. It can wipe it out in 3 or 4 days. But there's also the zoonotic aspect of it. So what I mean by zoonotic aspect of it, there is a possibility that it can cross the species barrier. Now, if it does that, and it develops human-to-human transmission, you can end up with a devastating pandemic. I mean, you just have to think of the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. That started in a bird, went to a pig, went to a soldier that was going off to the First World War, and about 100 million people died. So there is always the fear that this virus can get into the human population, and then we have a potential for a serious pandemic.
I suppose the question then would be, what do we do now? Do we continue with our policy of stamping out, or do we look at vaccinations? And I imagine, is this a moment to sort of rethink the policy because of the sheer scale of it? Or is it actually just, frankly, too late?
My opinion is that it probably is too late, because if you import the vaccines, ideally now to get the vaccine to work, you need to vaccinate the breeder birds. And now if the breeder birds have died or culled, it's going to take a good 18, 20, 25 weeks to replace those breeder birds, get them up into breeding populations. So vaccination, if the vaccine is approved today, it's not going to stop the current problem. It's a longer term possibility for control. But then you have to admit that you've lost control of the disease.
I presume what's going to happen in the market is that you first see the shortage of eggs, and only later you see the shortage of meat. Would that be right? And the other difference is it's quite difficult to import eggs. We eat more of them. It's a lot easier to import meat, and I'm sure somewhere there are about 6 CEOs of 6 different companies in Brazil who are rubbing their hands together a little bit right now at the import market, which is opening up here.
That is absolutely true. I'm fortunate enough to travel to Brazil quite frequently, because I do assist some of the poultry farms in Brazil with their disease control options. And it's a massive market. The industry is astronomically big. And they can land poultry products in South Africa. At one stage, they were doing it cheaper than we could produce them locally. So there was tariffs put onto the imported poultry to preserve jobs. But yes, Brazil certainly can supply the demand, and it's also feasible to import eggs. There's also Brazil's also got a massive layer industry. When I visited Brazil some time ago, there was one farmer that I went to. They had more layer birds than the whole of South Africa. So it's a massive industry in Brazil.
How long do you think it's going to take our industry to recover from all of this? So you spoke about 25 weeks. Would it be about that? Would that be the case? I mean, are we going to panic buy eggs until then?
It's going to take a while. Because what happens now is the breeder birds need to be replaced. And they start laying around about 21, 22, 23 weeks. They go into peak production 35 weeks. Then the eggs have to go, they hatch. It takes 21 days for the eggs to hatch. And then you start putting them into the poultry houses, and on average, the broiler bird, the meat bird, stays in the poultry house for about 35 days. So you add all of that up, it's going to be a substantial lag before we've caught up. And you know what's really worrying is the impact that this is having on the small to medium-sized poultry farmers, because they're 100% reliant on getting birds from the breeders. And if the birds are being culled, they're not getting replacement birds for their egg production or for their broilers. So it's going to be a long-term problem.
Professor Robert Bragg, thank you. The Department of Microbiology and Biochemistry at the University of the Free State. Really do appreciate the time.